It's like I don't care about nothing, man. Yeah. Oh,
What's going on, guys? This video is going to go over triangles you're going to classify them based on angles. You're also going to classify them based on their sides. The other thing that you're going to do is also learn about triangle sum theorem. So how many degrees does all the angles inside a triangle have to add up to? So I hope you enjoy. All right, so we are looking at the triangle or classifying triangles note packet. Now this one, first we're going to name all the triangles based on their angles and then based on their sides. So the first one has 3 acute angles. So all angles are less than 90 degrees. So every single one of these angles is less than 90. So we're going to call this an acute triangle. And for triangle, instead of actually writing it out, I'm just going to put the symbol for a triangle, which is just a small triangle. Now, if it has an obtuse angle, so one of the angles greater than 90 degrees, we
something big, something mega, something copious, something capacious, something kajunga.
Call this an obtuse triangle. So in this case, this angle here is greater than 90, so I know it's an obtuse triangle. Now the next one says one right angle. So if it has a right angle, I know it is a right angle because of this box. I'm going to call this a right triangle. So it has an angle equal to 90 degrees. Now if it has 3 congruent angles, technically we call that an equiangular triangle. I like to call it equilateral.
It's Brittany, bitch.
Which technically means that all the sides are congruent, but if all sides are congruent, so are all the angles. So in this one, what we're going to learn about later is that all angles inside a triangle have to add up to 180. So each of these is actually 60 degrees. So I'm only going to do the first 3 examples with you. So this one says triangle CDE, CDE. So I noticed that there is a box in the CDE triangle, so I am going to call it a right triangle. And again, I knew this because it had the box, which means that it equals 90 degrees. Now the next one is BCE. Now C is greater than 90, so I would call this an obtuse triangle. So it has an angle that is greater than 90 degrees. And the last one I'm going to actually show with you is ABE. So each of these arcs, so if you didn't remember what these are called arcs. They each have one arc in each of the angles, which tells me that they're all congruent. So that means that they all equal 60 degrees. And the one that had all of them equal was our equilateral. So this one will be an equilateral triangle. Okay, so the next one is we're doing it based by sides. So when we have 3 congruent sides, they are going to be called equilateral. And fun fact for you, that if all sides are congruent, so are all the angles. So all the angles would be actually 60 degrees. When they have 2 congruent sides, we call that isosceles. Now, a fun fact about this one, if 2 sides are congruent, so are these 2 angles right here. And the last one, if it has no congruent sides, we call that scalene. And if none of the sides are congruent, neither are any of the angles. So the one I'm going to show you is going to be number 7. This one says KLN. So I'm looking at this triangle. I'm going to notice that this side and this side both have 2 dashes through it. So since they both have the same amount of dashes going through it, I know they are congruent. So the only one that has 2 congruent sides is in isosceles. So this one would be an isosceles triangle. So I'm only going to go over a couple on page 2. Let's look at number 9 first. They want us to classify each by its angles and its sides. So if I look at 9 by its angles, well, it has a right angle. So since it has that, it would be a right triangle. So based on its angles, it's a right triangle. Now based on its sides, it told me 2 sides are congruent. So I would call that isosceles. So based on angles, it's a right triangle. Based on sides, it's isosceles. So the other one I'm going to show is number 13. Number 13, this is also a right triangle based on angles because it has a 90-degree angle. But this one, since we don't know any of the sides to be congruent, we would call this one scalene. Now anything else on this page is just extra practice for you.
Boo! You stink!
So now we're looking at page 4. We're looking at triangles sum theorem. This theorem says the sum of the measures of the angles of a triangle is 180. So if I add up every angle together, it has to equal 180 degrees. That's the idea of it. So now if I were to look at number 1, the way we would find the missing angle, angle 1, would be to add the ones that we have. We have 24 plus 37. That would equal 61. Now all of them added together have to equal 180. So now I can do 180 minus 61. And now that will equal 119 degrees. So angle 1 would be 119 degrees. All right, so the next one we're looking at is number 2. Number 2 says solve for all missing angles. So in this one, they gave you an equation for each angle. They didn't give you a number, but it uses the same rule that we have up here, where you add all the angles together and set it equal to 180. So if that's the case, I can just do 4x minus 22 plus 10x minus 4 plus x plus 11 and set it equal to 180. Next step will be to combine all like terms. So 4x, 10x, and x would go together. 4x plus 10x is 14x. 14x plus x is 15x. Then we combine negative 22, negative 4, which gives me negative 26. Add 11 to that, and I would get negative 15. So 15x minus 15 equals 180. Next step would be to add 15 to both sides. And that cancels out that. So now you have 15x equals 195. And I want to get x by itself. So the way I'm going to do that is by dividing each side by 15. And x equals 13. So now you found what x is, but you're not done yet.
What about you guys? We ain't found shit.
Now you have to figure out each of the angles. So the way you do that is anywhere you see x, now you're going to plug in 13. So let's say if we looked at angle Q, you have 4x minus 22. Well, instead of x, we have 4 times 13 minus 22. So 52 minus 22 equals 30 degrees. So angle Q would be 30 degrees. Now, let's go ahead and find R. So angle R had x plus 11. Instead of x, you have 13. So 13 plus 11 equals 24. So angle R is 24 degrees. And now 10x minus 4. So 10 times 13 minus 4. If you don't know the trick with multiplying with a number that has a 0 at the end, just put down however many zeros and then whatever's in front of it, then you multiply. So 1 times 13 is 13. So 130 minus 4 gives me 126. And you'll notice, or hopefully you notice, that if I were to add all these together, they do in fact equal 180. So that's a way you can check yourself to make sure you got it right.
They've done studies, you know. 60% of the time, it works every time.
That doesn't make sense.
So I'm going to do the same thing that I did in my classroom with number 5 and 6. I'm only going to show you how to find a couple angles just to make sure you remember how to find them. So like for number 5, I'm only going to show you how to find angle 2. Well, angle 2 and the 61 degrees are vertical angles. So vertical angles are supposed to be congruent. So if 61 is on this side, it's also 61 degrees on this side. So angle 2 is also 61 degrees. And we knew that because it was vertical. So anytime you see vertical angles, basically X marks the spot. So anytime you see two lines crossing, the angles across from each other would be congruent. Now number 6, the one I'm going to show you, is going to be angles 2 and 3. The way that we can find angles 2 and 3 is because it says BC bisects angle ACD. So if it gets bisected, that means cut in half. So angle ACD got cut in half. So since it used to be 90 degrees cut in half would be 45. So that means that 2 and 3 are both 45 degrees. Now I just wanted to show you a couple just to make sure you remembered vertical and bisect. The rest you would just do the triangle sum theory, where you add them all together and know that all the angles inside a triangle have to add up to 180. So now you should know all the different types of triangles. So you should be able to now classify them based on their sides or their angles. And then the other thing, probably the more important thing, is knowing that all the angles inside a triangle have to add up to 180. That is triangle sum theorem. That would have been the success criteria for this. So anything I didn't go over is extra practice for you.